Hello and welcome. I am dialing in here from the great outdoors. You're probably going to hear some beautiful sounds of nature in the background with birds and crickets and such. I want to talk about depression in this. It's going to be both video and podcast. And this is a topic that just came to me truthfully all of a sudden. And I thought I would dive into the topic of it because I feel that a lot of us, especially you potentially listening, watching, if you have gone through dark night of the soul, if you are struggling to find your identity, who you really are, healing from the past, healing from traumas, coming into alignment with your true authentic self, you may have encountered depression. And I'm going to talk a little bit about my story, what depression is, and how you can identify it, and how you can also work through it by understanding what is the cause. And that is part of shadow work that will be involved in the process to identify what is happening within yourself, within your emotions, within your psyche, within your body that may be causing depression. So first of all, I'll talk about what is depression. And if you know me, if you know my channel, if you know my history, I am not a psychiatrist. I am not a medical doctor professional. I come from experience and I come from a lot of research and studying and my own internal work. So I have had myself pretty much a lifetime of depression. I feel I may have been born into this life with a bit of depression, truthfully, thinking back. It was really tough. I had a really tough go since as far back as I can remember. I do know that I had a lot of light to offer. I had a lot of joy and fun, and I loved experiencing life. And for me, I'm an experiential learner. I am someone who learns through experience. I found school very boring. I found the common system, if you will, really difficult to fit in. And it caused a lot of problems with myself. And I just felt like I wasn't heard or I wasn't understood most of my life. And throughout my life, I was pushing myself and forcing myself to be someone I wasn't, fitting in a system that I didn't really belong, or I didn't really feel that I understood, or I could even become interested with. And it's difficult if you come from a different way of life, or a different personality, or even, as some families would term, a black sheep, or even if you learn differently, or you experience life differently, or you see things differently, it is really, really, really hard to be part of the system in society, the old paradigm, if you will. Going to school, getting good grades, getting a job, and getting married, having children, and that's it. That's the life, So I never fit with that plan, and it was really difficult because I truly feel that I did come in with a lot of light and vibrancy and curiosity for life. I was very curious. I would learn like a sponge. I was constantly learning, constantly experiencing life, but I had a lot of depression in the background, and eventually it came out in many different ways. So what depression is, in my eyes, in my experience, is when we are lost within ourselves, when we don't know who we truly are on a very core level, when we feel that we might not fit in, when we feel that we're not in alignment with our true self, or when we have completely detached from our soul calling, if you will, or our true authentic self. And our true authentic self is who we are and what we are on a very core level, void of the pressures of society, of our family, of our peers, void of the traumas, void of our subconscious programs that have been built and hardwired within ourselves since early childhood. When we have dismantled all those layers and all of those false beliefs around ourselves, around relationships, around society, then we return to our true authentic self and we own it. So speaking from experience, I had depression for, as I mentioned, most of my life. As far back as I can remember, I had a lot of difficulties that I was facing. Depression for me came in the way of not wanting to engage fully with the world. Eventually, I became very shut down. I wanted to spend time alone a lot, and I slept a lot. It was really hard for me to relate to people, and it was really hard for me I had a really hard childhood in general, family life. It was really difficult. I wasn't heard, I wasn't seen, I wasn't recognized, so I was really confused, or I was really lost with myself and with my path in life. So if this is resonating with you, then you definitely can relate to what I'm saying. I'm trying to also cover many different bases of what depression could be. If you haven't had a similar experience to myself, we all have different experiences, so I'm not expecting everyone to have the same experiences as mine by any means. But I've also worked with a lot of people, and I've studied this very carefully, because depression can lead to many different areas or different problems in our lives. It can affect many different areas in our lives, and it can cause drug and alcohol abuse. It can cause, yes, definitely numbing out with substances. It can affect the relationships that we attract, or the relationship dynamics that we put ourselves into, because we will feel low worth. We will feel that we don't deserve, or we are not in alignment with who we truly are and what we truly want. It is a very lost aspect in life, and a lot of people are depressed. Depression is rampant in our society. And what is the first thing that we go to when we're depressed? Numbing out, medication as well, right? So there's a lot of medication out there for depression. We don't need medication for depression, period. Enough said. That is it. That's my end of statement on that. We do not need medication to cure depression. We need to go deeper within ourselves to understand what is at the core level or the cause of the depression. And that's where society, or a portion of society, has failed humanity. It's basically masking the problem with medication, with a Band-Aid fix that becomes that one would become reliant on over a long period of time, because there is a lack of attention towards the root problem, and we need to get to the root in order to cure it. And so this is part of shadow work. This is actually a very, very integral part of shadow work, because we have to face what is difficult within ourselves. We need to face what is truly residing within us that is causing our depression in order to resolve it. And that's the point of shadow work. It is to go to the root cause so you can find it and let it go. You can identify what it is and let it go. And that is the point of shadow work. And that is what we can do for ourselves to cure depression. So as I mentioned, I suffered most of my life. I lived in it. I was a full-time resident of suffering. And it came from a lot of past life experience. I know that for sure. It came from a lot of this life experience. And I was very lost. I was very lost with myself. I was trying to achieve and create a name for myself and a career for myself that was making me miserable. I was pushing hard. I was working hard for all the wrong reasons. And I became more and more and more depressed as I moved along, because I was on the wrong path. I was pushing hard in the wrong direction. I was subconsciously programmed the wrong way to feel that I needed to prove myself for my parents, for society, and that wasn't the way to go. And it really did affect me in the long run. And I was drinking heavily. I was numbing out. I was detached from life, disassociating a lot. And it was really difficult to find myself. And if you know my story, I've talked about this in bits and pieces about the dark night of the soul. And truthfully, the dark night of the soul was depression on steroids. It was extremely, extremely intense. And depression can lead to suicidal thoughts, suicidal tendencies. It affects relationships. It affects our body. It affects our mind. It affects our emotions. It affects how we interact with the world. It affects our work performance. It affects everything in our life. And as I mentioned, I feel that depression is when we are lost with our path, with who we truly are. And we need to go into the layers of what has been constructed throughout our life to dismantle them. You know, dismantle the false personas, dismantle the ego, dismantle the identity that we have built or that we've been striving for. That is not really, really who we truly are. But it takes a while to understand who we truly are, because those layers that we have built throughout our life have become hardwired within us. And it takes a lot of work. It does. And everyone's path is different. Some people may have a shorter path of self-discovery, of working through depression. Some may have years. And mine was years. Mine was years to work through and to really understand it, and to identify the root cause of what was triggering the depression. right? So we can all work through depression if we choose to do so. And this is the problem with society. We have quick fixes for everything. We have medication, as I mentioned. We can turn to alcohol, we can turn to TV, we can detach, anything to not face the heavier energies, the pain, the suffering, the uncomfortableness that we can have within ourselves. But that uncomfortable energy is our answer. And when we go in it, when we face it, when we lean into it, when we understand what it is, why am I depressed? Go into the why. Why am I depressed? I'm depressed because I am not where I want to be in life. Well, why am I depressed? Because I'm not where I want to be in life. Because I'm not happy doing what I'm doing. Why am I not happy doing what I'm doing? Because I don't like what I'm doing. I'm not meant to do this. Well, what am I meant to do then? You go into the whys, into the layer, and that just is a simple example, but you go into the whys. And then you can go into things like childhood. You can go into past life regression. You can go into the areas within your past, even in school, anything that could give you clues as to how you've been programmed subconsciously, or how you've been, the path that you've been put on based on a direction that you felt that you were supposed to experience, or that your parents wanted you to experience, or you wanted to please your parents or please someone or your teachers, or however it turned out. It can come from many different things as well. It can come from not processing grief properly. There could be depression, holding on to attachments of the past, relationships, for example. When we are in alignment with our true self, when we are confident with who we are, when we are whole, and when we are in our center, we don't lose our energy outwardly. We don't hold on to things from the past easily. We can let it go because we understand the dynamic and what has happened, and what is happening, and why it's important to understand it from an expansive viewpoint, and how we can let it go and come to peace with things in our life, come to peace with attachments, come to peace with grief, come to peace with ourselves, come to peace with resentment. And things like resentment, having negative feelings towards the past. I wish I could have done that. That could have been better. The past is done. The past is done. So we have to, and it's really important to let go of the past. The what ifs, I wish I could have, I should have, don't exist. And when we hold on to that, we are creating a false narrative around a story from the past that doesn't exist. Then we keep ourselves stuck in the past, and we don't allow ourselves to fully move into the future and let go of the past and accept what has happened. Because everything that has happened, good or bad, has served a purpose, and it has happened perfectly, and we have to see that. But a lot of the times our ego gets in the way, or our old programming or our old wounds get in the way and hold on to these narratives, these thoughts, these emotions that weigh us down and hold us back. And yes, it can cause depression, because like I said, when we are not whole and when we're not in alignment within ourselves, then we will lose our energy to outer circumstances and to situations, to relationships, to family, to what went wrong, to all the problems in the world, the sufferer, the wallower, the victim. So this is all tied to the concept of us losing ourselves in situations and not seeing it as, no matter how difficult the situation has been, not seeing it as an experience, not seeing it as a learning lesson in life. But our triggers become activated, and we hold on to these narratives, these stories, or we hold on to these stories, these regrets, these wounds, these what ifs, and the fear or the negativity or the sadness that may reside within us that causes depression of where we are in our life. And these all are tied in together. And as I mentioned, and I need to reiterate this again, because this is really important, when we are whole within ourselves, when we can see life in the true reality that it is, and not lose ourselves with the attachments, with the negativity, with the wallowing, with the depression, then we become more whole, and we bring our energy back into our center, and we see life differently, and we don't lose our energy outwardly, and we don't hold ourselves back, and we don't weigh ourselves down. We arrive into our center, we become more confident, and we see life differently. We see the challenges as opportunities or as situations that will allow us to grow, instead of getting kicked down and not moving forward in life and maybe numbing out and becoming a victim of it. we look at it differently. We start becoming more whole and, again, in alignment with who we truly are and what we're meant to do. And depression is a bit of a mask. It holds a bit of a mask around our true identity and our true self, and also can shift perception on the reality of how we really see life. It can skew our reality of the true situation in our life, because a lot of it comes from here, remember, right? Our mind. Old programming, subconscious programming, false realities come from our subconscious, come from our mind, right? So we see the world differently when we are depressed. We see the world a lot differently. We see the world a lot differently when we are in alignment with our true self and when we know what we're meant to do. And we see the world as an experience that we get to create, that we get to master, that we get to enjoy, that we get to manifest, and that we get to live to our full potential. So you can see the dynamic between depression and being whole within ourselves. So if you are suffering from depression, if you are feeling like you are lost within yourself, give yourself the time and space to go back and to reach the root of where that could be coming from. What is causing the depression? What do you feel lost with? And connect with your heart. Connect with your intuition. Connect with your feelings of what you feel, what you want to do, what you desire the most, and let the synchronicities find you as well, right? And this is part of creation. There's this shift in the way that we're used to working and operating. And if we're going through depression, it could also mean that we're operating in the old paradigm. We're working with our ego. We're working with the old programming that we're used to, but that isn't the way that is working for you. And it probably needs to be dismantled, right? So we need to go into the subconscious programming of what is being constructed that isn't working anymore, and how can we deconstruct it? How can we face it, get to the root cause, not avoid it, not numb out, understand really where it's coming from, and being gentle with the process, rather than in the ego and not wanting to face it and getting angry and getting frustrated and getting resentful and becoming triggered by what is embedded within that's causing the depression. So usually it is coming from a place of not being in alignment with our true self, not honoring our true self, maybe masking our true identity, or maybe there's shame there that we're ashamed of showing our true self or speaking our truth. Maybe we're holding on to guilt. So all of these energies do need to be addressed. There are a lot of difficulties that reside within our subconscious. And yes, it does affect our body. It definitely affects our body because everything is connected. And when our mind is holding on to a story so tightly, when we're in the suffering mode, if we're in the fear, in the worry, depression, then it is going to affect our reality, how we react in the world, our behaviors, the way we think, the way we feel. It can really distort our perception on our reality, right? So it does take time. And for myself, it took, I mean, I've been working on this for a long time, trying to figure it out. And it really didn't become clear with me until the last 3 years, most specifically this last year. And I really took 3 years every day, and I can't even express how committed I have been to this practice because I wanted to create change. I was tired of living the way I was living. I was tired of attracting what I was attracting in my life. I wanted better. And if you want better, then you have to be prepared to do the work. And know that the suffering and the depression and the sadness and the sorrow and even fear comes from the subconscious, comes from within the shadow, and it does come from the mind. So be very aware of that. You can let go of those thoughts when you're finding yourself in moments of depression. It can be fleeting as well. Sometimes depression will come up and it could affect some of us maybe only for a few days. That could be old energy purging and you going through a transformation. So it's really important not to numb out, not to fear, not to get angry with it or resentful of what you're going through. Try to see what is really happening and try to let it go as fast as possible, but honor it rather than avoiding it altogether. Work through it and try to see where it's coming from. You know, some of it, like I said, some of it just might be old energy that needs to find its way out, which is completely valid. I've gone through that many times, major purging of energies, very uncomfortable. A lot of depression came in with that, a lot of very emotional upheaval within myself as well. But it was always temporary. And I knew that it would only last so long, because it is also really important. I mentioned this many times before as well. It's really important to have focus on who you want to be and the kind of life you want after the cycle happens, after the really heavy energies come to the surface. And that is your guiding light. That is your North Star. That is your guiding light. And when you know what you want, it will find its way. Your body will align. Your mind will align. Some synchronicities might show up. You might discover new information that you need right at that specific moment in time. There's a lot of trust that needs to happen with this process. Like I said, it is an inward journey. It is your inner discovery, and only you will have the answers for yourself within, right? And when I work with people, I guide, I work with energy. I work with understanding their story, their what they're facing, some difficulties that they're facing. But at the end of the day, it's going to be up to them to feel within themselves based on the guidance that I can give them. But this is your own journey. This has been my own journey. I can't speak 100% on my experiences, because my experiences are just going to be different than everyone else's. But there are a lot of common threads with how we can identify, how we can understand, and how we can work through these moments in our life, right? And sometimes, as I mentioned, it might last for a long time. Depression can have a very strong hold on some of us. So again, part of the shadow work is really important to get to the root cause. I use this analogy many times. It's like a weed. If we cut the weed off at the top, it's just going to grow back. So if we don't face the truth of ourselves, if we don't get honest with ourselves, and if we don't go to the root cause, then it's just going to keep growing back, and it's going to grow back stronger and stronger, and it's going to affect our body, it's going to affect our life. We can avoid it and ignore it, but it's just going to keep coming back. So we need to go to the root. We need to pull out the root and understand what that is, to fully let it go, to fully release it, and to fully move on in our life. And that is the shadow work, and that is coming to terms with what is truly causing this, and knowing that depression is an experience as well, okay? Yes, it's uncomfortable. And please know, I am speaking from experience. And it took me a long time. My ego wanted to hold on to the story of why I'm depressed, and I have a right to be depressed because of everything I had gone through. I had a right to be depressed. I had a right to be angry. That was my ego. That was my ego talking, right? And we can put ourselves in that mind frame. We can put ourselves in that state of being, but we're not actually constructively working our way out if we feel that we deserve to be angry, or we are resentful, or we're holding on to things so tightly and consciously holding on to them. When we're consciously holding on to these emotions, or these angers, or these stories, or these memories of the past, or the feeling of loss, being lost, and not working on constructive ways to get out of it, then we will sit there for a long time. We will remain there for quite some time. That's why it's important to be conscious and aware, to be aware of the narrative, the story, the emotions, what is surfacing, what can you pay attention to, and what is on a deeper level for you to reach, for you to understand within yourself, connect the dots with your past, try to let it go as much as possible, okay? And yes, you may need some guidance, because some of these areas within ourselves are so deeply embedded, we can't see them without proper guidance. So I've mentioned this a few times also. I offer 30-minute free consultation. Please book in. It's a conversation. I can answer any of your questions. But my hope with these videos is to offer guidance so you can start the process with your own journey, your own inner discovery, and work on ways of finding your true authentic self, what you're meant to do, and honor that, and have trust in it, and have faith in it. And that's the whole other process. When you come out of this depressive state, and moving towards empowerment within yourself and alignment within yourself, that's a whole adjustment that needs to happen. Because if you've been living with depression for a long time, chances are there's going to be an adjustment period to trust yourself, to trust the process, and to align with your true power, your true authentic self, who you really are and what you're really meant to do, and own it, right? So that's a whole other learning curve that needs to happen, but it's all depending on where you are and your journey. So if you have any questions about depression, if you feel that you have been suffering from it for a long time, if you're lost with this feeling, with this sensation, You can contact me, like I said, book in for a 30-minute free consultation. Even if you just want someone to talk to, I am fully here for you and I'm here to support you. I've been through it all, so I understand it fully. And it is a very lonely place to be as well. It can create a lot of isolation, but it is good. Isolation isn't a bad thing to understand more about ourselves and to go through our own inner journey, but it also can limit us and limit our abilities to understand ourselves more and to work through ways that we may not understand or we may not see. So like I said, please book in, reach out anytime. I'm sending much love and well wishes your way through your journey and beyond. And I will be seeing you again very soon. Take care.